Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the TCS Defiance and watched his world die. The screens showed New Dallas burning below them, its great cities turning into lakes of fire under the Centauri bombardment. He had served in space for 20 years, but had never seen destruction like this. The orbital defense platforms that had protected 2 million human lives were now twisted metal floating in the void. The Centauri warships moved like deadly silver fish through the darkness, there, hulls gleaming with that strange crystalline armor that made them nearly impossible to destroy. Jake had fought alongside Centauri forces in the border wars against the Keth pirates. He had called them Hell Eyes then. He had been wrong. "Sir, we're getting distress calls from all sectors," his communications officer Lisa said. Her voice shook as she spoke. "The colony ships are trying to evacuate, but the Centauri are hunting them down." Jake gripped the rail in front of him until his knuckles turned white. The Defiance was just a patrol cruiser, built for police work and small skirmishes. Against the Centauri battle fleet below, it would last maybe 30 seconds. But those were his people dying down there. Those were human children crying in the darkness as their homes burned. "Get me Admiral Hayes," he ordered. The view screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the TCS Liberty. Admiral Lisa Hayes looked older than her 50 years, her gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. Behind her, Jake could see other officers, running between stations, their faces grim. "Jake, thank God you're alive," she said. "I need you to fall back to the jump point and escort any civilian ships you can find." "What about New Dallas?" Jake asked, though he already knew the answer. "New Dallas is gone," Hayes replied, her voice flat. "The Centauri hit all our major colonies at the same time. New York Prime, Boston Station, Chicago Port. They came in force, and they came to kill everyone." Jake felt something cold settle in his stomach. How many survivors? "We don't know yet. Maybe a few thousand out of 20 million. Hayes paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. "Jake, they're not taking prisoners. They're killing everyone they find. Men, women, children, everyone." The communication cut out as another wave of Centauri fighters swept past the Liberty. Jake watched the Admiral's ship fire everything it had at the Silver Swarm, but there were too many of them. The Liberty's shields flared and died, and then the great ship broke apart in a ball of white fire. Lisa Hayes was dead. The woman who had taught Jake everything he knew about commanding a starship was gone, along with her crew of 800. And still the Centauri kept killing. "Sir," his tactical officer Ben called out, "I'm reading civilian ships trying to reach the jump point. Looks like passenger liners and cargo haulers." "How many?" 12 ships, maybe 3,000 people total. 3,000 out of 20 million. Jake closed his eyes for a moment and tried to push down the rage that was building inside him. When he opened them again, he was thinking clearly. Set course for the jump point. Signal those civilian ships to form up behind us. We're getting them out of here. The Defiance moved through the debris field that had once been humanity's proudest achievement. Bits of space stations and destroyed ships bounced off their hull. In the distance, New Dallas continued to burn, its atmosphere glowing red from the fires below. Dr. Amanda Wright sat in her laboratory on Earth, 300 light years away from the killing, and listened to the final transmissions from the colonies. Her job was to monitor deep space communications and track the movement of human ships across known space. Today, that meant listening to people die. The voices came through the speakers in waves. Mothers calling for their children. Ship captains reporting hull breaches and failing life support. Military officers giving final reports before their positions. Were overrun. And then came the transmission that would haunt Amanda for the rest of her life. "Hello? Is anyone there? This is Jenny Miller, and I'm 7 years old, and I'm scared." The little girl's voice was tiny and lost in the static. "The bad ships came, and Mommy told me to hide in the basement, but I can hear the fire upstairs, and I don't know what to do. Please, someone help me. I'm at 432 Oak Street in New Miami, and I'm really scared." Amanda reached for the transmitter. Controls, desperate to answer, to tell the child that help was coming. But even as her fingers touched the switches, she knew it was too late. New Miami was 800 miles from the nearest human outpost, and the Centauri had been systematically destroying every city on New Dallas for the past 6 hours. "Please," Jenny's voice continued, smaller now. "I can smell smoke, and it's getting really hot. Is my daddy coming back?" "He said he would come back." The transmission dissolved into static. Amanda sat staring at the dead speakers for a long time. Somewhere in the ruins of New Miami, a 7-year-old girl had died alone and afraid, calling for help that would never come. President Kate Sullivan received the reports in her office. Deep beneath the Swiss Alps, each one was worse than the last. The Centauri had hit every major human colony simultaneously, using inside knowledge of human defenses and population centers. This was not a random attack or a territorial dispute. This was planned genocide. "Madam President," her chief of staff, Gary said, "the Emergency Council is assembled and waiting for your orders." Kate stood up from her desk and straightened her jacket. She had been elected on a platform of peace and cooperation with alien species. She had spent 4 years building trade agreements and cultural exchange programs. All of that seemed meaningless. "Now, tell them we're at war," she said simply. The word felt strange in her mouth. Humanity had not fought a real war in over a century. They had forgotten what it meant to hate, to kill, to destroy without mercy. The Centauri had just reminded them that, as Kate walked to the emergency session, she thought about Jenny Miller, the little girl whose final moments had been broadcast across human space. She thought about Admiral Hayes and her crew. She thought about the 20 million people who had been alive yesterday and were ashes today. Something fundamental had broken inside the human spirit. The age of peaceful coexistence was over. Centauri had wanted to remove humanity from the galaxy, and they had succeeded in one way they had never intended. They had removed human restraint. Commander Ryan Blake had spent 15 years studying alien biology, learning how different species evolved and adapted to their environments. He knew that Centauri bodies were made of living crystal that could regenerate from almost any wound. He knew their blood was a blue fluid that carried both nutrients and electrical signals. He knew they reproduced by splitting into smaller versions of themselves when they reached maturity. What he had not known was how easily that living crystal would shatter when exposed to high-frequency sonic weapons. Ryan stood in his laboratory on Mars Colony, looking at the broken pieces of what had been a Centauri soldier just minutes before. The creature had been captured during the attack on the research station at Europa, and Ryan had been ordered to find its weaknesses. The old Ryan would have treated the prisoner with dignity and respect, following all the protocols for xenobiological research. The old Ryan had died with New Dallas. The sonic frequency of 847.3 hertz causes immediate structural failure, he said into his recorder. The crystalline matrix cannot maintain cohesion under sustained exposure. Death occurs within 12 seconds. He paused, looking at the blue stains on his laboratory table. "I recommend immediate deployment to all combat units." Across the solar system, the Emergency War Council was meeting in the deep bunkers of Luna Base. President Kate Sullivan sat at the head of a metal table, surrounded by military commanders and civilian leaders who had been preparing for peace just days before. Now they spoke only of killing. General Paul Rodriguez had commanded the Terran Defense Force for 8 years without firing a shot in anger. His job had been to show strength while maintaining diplomatic relations with hostile species. The TDF was meant to be a deterrent, not a weapon of war. "We have 43 combat ships operational," he reported. "Another 100 in various stages of construction or repair. The Centauri hit our shipyards hard, but some of our facilities survived. Is that enough?" Kate asked. Paul looked at the tactical displays showing Centauri fleet movements throughout human space. The aliens had deployed over 300 warships in their initial attack, with reserves stationed at key points along human trade routes. Traditional military thinking said humanity needed at least equal numbers to have a chance. "No," he said honestly, "but we're not fighting a traditional war anymore." Dr. Helen Murphy arrived at Lunar Base, carrying a metal briefcase that held the future of human warfare. She had been working on theoretical weapons research for the past decade, projects that had been deemed too dangerous for practical development. The Ethics Committee had blocked her funding repeatedly, calling her work unnecessarily destructive. The Ethics Committee was no longer meeting. "Quantum destabilization weapons," she explained to the Council, opening her briefcase to reveal a device the size of a coffee cup. "The theory is simple. Every atom wants to maintain its current energy state. If you force enough atoms to change states simultaneously, matter simply stops existing in any meaningful way." "What kind of range?" General Rodriguez asked. "The test version can destroy a city block. The full-scale version could crack a planet." Helen's voice was calm and professional. "I can have working prototypes ready in 6 weeks." Kate Sullivan stared at the small device. A month ago, she would have been horrified by the thought of weapons that could destroy entire worlds. Now she found herself calculating how many Centauri colonies they could eliminate before the aliens had time to respond. "Do it," she said. Lieutenant Colonel Steve Davis received his new orders while evacuating the civilian population from Titan Colony. The Centauri fleet was 3 days out and moving fast. Standard procedure was to load as many people as possible onto transport ships and flee to safer systems. Steve read his orders twice to make sure he understood them correctly. "Sir," his second-in-command, Captain Nancy Hart, said, "the evacuation ships are ready to depart. We can save maybe 60% of the population." "Change of plans," Steve replied, folding the message and putting it in his pocket. "Signal all ships to maintain position. We're not running." Nancy looked confused. "Sir, we can't fight a Centauri battle group with mining equipment and civilian transports." "We're not going to fight them," Steve said quietly. "We're going to kill them." The plan was simple and terrible. Every major structure on Titan contained fusion reactors for power generation. Every reactor could be overloaded to create a nuclear explosion. Every explosion could be timed to occur simultaneously when the Centauri fleet was in optimal range. The colonists understood what they were being asked to do. They were being asked to die so that their deaths would mean something. They were being asked to trade their lives for Centauri ships, to make the aliens pay a price for every human world they destroyed. 93% of them volunteered to stay. On Earth, the news networks struggled to report what was happening. In human space, the old language of diplomacy and measured response no longer applied. Reporters who had spent years discussing trade agreements and cultural exchanges now found themselves trying to explain systematic genocide and the human response to it. Amanda Wright had become the unofficial voice of the colonies, broadcasting updates to anyone who would listen. Her laboratory had been converted into a makeshift communications center, with screens showing the status of human settlements throughout known space. "This is Dr. Amanda Wright reporting from Earth Communications Center," she said into the microphone. "Today marks the 5th day since the Centauri attack began. We have confirmed reports of total civilian casualties on New Dallas, New York Prime, Boston Station, and 14 smaller colonies. The death toll now stands at approximately 18 million confirmed, with 2 million still missing. She paused, looking at the latest reports from the outer systems. However, I am also receiving word of human resistance efforts throughout the affected regions. The colonists on Titan have chosen to remain at their posts despite the approaching Centauri fleet. The mining stations in the belt are being converted to weapons platforms, and our military forces are implementing new combat doctrines developed specifically for fighting Centauri forces. Amanda did not mention the sonic weapons or the quantum destabilizers. She did not talk about the plans to eliminate entire Centauri worlds or the fact that humanity was preparing to become something it had never been before. Instead, she simply said, the Centauri wanted to eliminate humanity from this galaxy. They have succeeded in eliminating human mercy. Captain Jake Morrison brought the Defiance and its small convoy of civilian ships to the rendezvous point at Wolf 359, where other survivors from the attacks were gathering. The fleet was a pathetic sight. Damaged freighters, overcrowded passenger liners, and a handful of military escorts that had survived the initial bombardment. But Jake was not looking at the ships themselves. He was looking at the faces of the people aboard them. These were humans who had lost everything. Their homes, their families, their entire way of life had been destroyed in a matter of hours. They had nothing left except their lives and their rage. Captain Morrison, came a transmission from the passenger liner New Hope. This is Captain Maria Santos. What are our orders? Jake looked at the tactical display, showing the small fleet of survivors. 12 ships carrying maybe 3,000 people. Against the might of the Centauri hegemony, they were nothing. Against the old human way of thinking, they were irrelevant. But humanity was changing. The species that had spent centuries building peaceful colonies and maintaining diplomatic relations was remembering older instincts. They were remembering that sometimes survival required becoming monsters. All ships, this is Morrison, Jake said into the communication system. Form up in convoy formation. We're heading back to Earth to rearm and refit. Sir, Maria Santos replied, the New Hope is a civilian transport. We don't have any weapons. Jake smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. You will. Captain Nina Foster stood on the bridge of the TCS Vengeance and felt the new ship respond to her commands like a living weapon. 6 months had passed since the Centauri attacks, and humanity had spent every day of that time learning to build tools of war. A Vengeance was not designed for exploration or peaceful contact. It existed for one purpose, killing aliens as efficiently as possible. The ship's hull was painted black with red symbols marking each confirmed Centauri kill. Nina had personally overseen the installation of every weapon system, from the quantum torpedoes that could punch through crystalline armor to the sonic pulse generators that turned Centauri soldiers into blue dust. Target acquired, her weapons officer, Lieutenant Dave Kim, reported. Centauri patrol cruiser, bearing 047 Mark 12, range 50,000 kilometers. Nina watched the alien ship on her tactical display. 3 months ago, the sight of a Centauri warship would have meant retreat and a call for backup. Now it meant target practice. Fire quantum torpedoes, she ordered. The Vengeance shuddered as its main weapons launched. The torpedoes streaked across space faster than the Centauri sensors could track, each one carrying enough destructive power to level a city. They struck the enemy ship's crystalline hull and detonated simultaneously. The Centauri cruiser simply ceased to exist. Another one for the count, Dave said with satisfaction. That makes 17 this month. Nina nodded and marked the kill on her personal log. Somewhere in the expanding cloud of debris, Centauri crew members were dying in the vacuum of space. She felt no pity for them. They had chosen genocide, and humanity was simply returning the favor. Commander Alex Turner commanded a squadron of converted mining ships in the asteroid belt, vessels that had once extracted valuable minerals from space rocks. Now they served as improvised warships in humanity's growing fleet. The Centauri had made the mistake of sending a patrol fleet to investigate the mining stations, expecting to find easy targets. Instead, they found a carefully prepared ambush. Remember, we only get one shot at this. Alex transmitted to his squadron. The moment they detect us, they'll try to run. Don't let them. His ship, the former mining vessel Golden Prospector, drifted silently behind a large asteroid. Its cargo holds were packed with nuclear warheads taken from decommissioned planetary defense systems. The plan was simple. Ram the Centauri ships and detonate the warheads on impact. It was a suicide mission, but Alex and his crew had volunteered anyway. They had all lost family in the colony attacks. Death in battle was preferable to living with. A memory of human children crying for help that never came. Contact, his sensor operator reported. 5 Centauri ships entering the belt. They're scanning for human activity. Alex watched the alien ships move through the asteroid field. There, crystalline hulls gleaming in the distant sunlight. They were beautiful in their own way, like living jewels drifting through space. Soon they would be radioactive vapor. All units, this is Turner. Execute attack pattern Omega. The mining ships emerged from hiding simultaneously, their engines burning at maximum thrust. The Centauri ships detected them immediately and began evasive maneuvers, but they were too late. Human vessels slammed into alien hulls at relativistic speeds, and the nuclear warheads detonated in brilliant flashes of light. When the explosions faded, nothing remained of either fleet. Alex Turner and his crews were dead, but so were 200 Centauri soldiers. In the new mathematics of human warfare, it was considered a victory. Dr. Jennifer Morris worked in a laboratory deep beneath the surface of Mars, surrounded by security measures that would have been unthinkable before. The war. Her project had no official name, but the soldiers who transported her materials called it the humanity virus. The concept was elegant in its simplicity. Centauri technology was based on quantum neural networks that linked individual soldiers to their command structure. If those networks could be infected with a specially designed virus, the entire system would collapse. Jennifer had spent months studying captured Centauri equipment, learning how their quantum processors functioned. She had discovered that the aliens relied heavily on shared consciousness, with individual soldiers receiving orders directly through their neural implants. It was their greatest strength, but also their fatal weakness. Test Subject 17, she spoke into her recorder. Centauri soldier captured at Europa Station. Neural implant intact and fully functional. The alien prisoner was strapped to an examination table, its crystalline body restrained by bands of pure titanium. Jennifer had long ago stopped thinking of the Centauri as living beings. They were test subjects, sources of data, weapons to be turned against their own kind. Introducing Humanity Virus version 12.7, she continued, injecting the modified quantum. Programmed directly into the creature's neural implant. Expected result: complete system failure within 60 seconds. The Centauri began convulsing immediately as the virus spread through its quantum neural network. Its crystalline structure started to glow, then crack, as conflicting signals overloaded its biological systems. After 43 seconds, it stopped moving. Success, Jennifer reported. Virus spread contained to test subject. Ready for field deployment. She looked at the vials of quantum virus arranged on her laboratory table. Each one contained enough destructive potential to eliminate an entire Centauri battle group. The alien command structure that had coordinated the genocide of human colonies would become the instrument of their own destruction. Major Chris Baker led the first human ground assault on a Centauri military installation since the war began. The target was Outpost Gamma 7, a listening post on the edge of Zentari space that monitored human communications. Intelligence suggested it was lightly defended, with maybe 50 alien soldiers. Intelligence was wrong. "Contact front," his sergeant. Lisa Wong shouted as Zentari defenders opened fire from fortified positions. Multiple hostiles, crystalline armor, energy weapons. Chris dove for cover behind a damaged piece of machinery as blue energy bolts sizzled past his head. His assault team was equipped with the new sonic weapons that had proven so effective against Zentari biology, but they had to get close enough to use them. "Rodriguez Martinez, flank left," he ordered. "Wong Phillips with me?" "We go straight up the middle." The human soldiers moved with precision, born of intensive training and burning hatred. Each of them wore armor, decorated with images of the burning colonies, reminders of why they fought. They carried weapons designed specifically to kill Zentari, and they used them without mercy. The sonic pulse generators turned the first line of alien defenders into clouds of blue crystal dust. The surviving Zentari fell back to secondary positions, but the humans followed relentlessly. There would be no retreat, no quarter given, no prisoners taken. When the battle ended 20 minutes later, Outpost Gamma 7 was a smoking ruin. 53. Zentari soldiers lay dead among the wreckage of their equipment. The humans had suffered 2 casualties, Private Johnson with a minor energy burn, and Corporal Davis with a broken arm from falling debris. "Sweep the facility," Chris ordered. "Secure any intelligence materials and prepare demolition charges. I want this place reduced to atoms." As his soldiers searched the outpost, Chris stood looking at the bodies of the alien defenders. 6 months ago, he would have felt regret at the necessity of killing sentient beings. He would have wondered if there could have been another way, a peaceful solution to the conflict. Now he felt only satisfaction at a job well done. The Zentari had chosen to make war on human children. They would discover that human adults could be far more dangerous than they had imagined. The news of human victories spread through the galaxy like ripples on a pond. Other alien species, previously neutral in the conflict, began to take notice of humanity's transformation from peaceful colonists to efficient killers. Some expressed concern about the brutality of human tactics. Others quietly began reconsidering their own relationships with the Terran Federation. The Keth pirates, who had fought both humans and Zentari in the past, issued a formal statement, declaring their neutrality in the conflict. The Vrax Trade Consortium suspended all commercial relations with Zentari space. Even the ancient elders of the core worlds sent diplomatic messages expressing their desire for continued peaceful relations with humanity. Captain Jake Morrison received these reports aboard the rebuilt TCS Defiance as he patrolled the outer systems. The ship had been refitted with new weapons and armor, transformed from a peaceful patrol vessel into a hunter-killer. Like humanity itself, the Defiance had been broken and remade into something deadlier. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the Martian Defense Fleet. 3 more Zentari ships destroyed in the Vega system." Jake nodded and updated his tactical display. The red markers showing confirmed. Zentari kills now numbered in the hundreds. Each marker represented alien ships destroyed, alien crews dead, alien families that would never see their relatives return home. He felt no pity for them. They had started this war with genocide. Humanity was simply finishing it. Admiral Ben Clark stood before the holographic display in his command center and studied the positions of every known Zentari fleet in the galaxy. 2 years had passed since the Great Hunt began, and humanity had systematically tracked down and destroyed most of the alien forces. What had started as revenge was now becoming extermination. The display showed 847 confirmed kills, from single patrol ships to entire battle groups. The Zentari, who had once commanded over 300 warships, now had fewer than 50 vessels left. They were scattered across remote systems, hiding in asteroid fields and nebulae, desperately trying to avoid the human fleets that hunted them. Admiral, his intelligence officer commander Sarah Lai reported, "We've detected Zentari signals in the Rigel system. Long-range scans suggest at least 8 ships, possibly including their command vessel." Ben studied the tactical data. The Rigel system was deep in former Zentari space, a region that humanity now controlled completely. For aliens to be hiding there meant they were becoming desperate. "Prepare the strike force," he ordered. "I want 20 ships minimum. No survivors." This time, Captain Mary Johnson commanded the orbital bombardment fleet surrounding Zentari Prime, the crystalline homeworld that had once been the center of alien civilization. The planet's cities gleamed like jewels beneath their protective atmospheric shields, housing billions of Zentari civilians who had never voted for war against humanity. Mary did not care about their innocence. Bombardment Group Alpha report. Status, she transmitted from the bridge of her flagship TCS Retribution. "All ships ready for planetary strike," came the reply from Captain Robert Hayes. Quantum torpedoes loaded and targeted on major population centers. Mary looked at her. Tactical display showing the beautiful crystalline spires that reached toward the alien sky. Each spire housed millions of Zentari families, beings who lived and loved and feared death just like humans did. In 6 hours, they would all be radioactive ash. "Begin bombardment sequence," she ordered. The first wave of quantum torpedoes struck. The planetary shields like hammers of light. The Zentari defenses held for 17 minutes before collapsing under the sustained assault. The second wave of weapons fell directly on the cities themselves. Mary watched through her ship sensors as entire crystalline metropolises simply vanished, replaced by expanding craters of molten glass. The death toll climbed rapidly. 10 million, 50 million, 100 million alien civilians dead in the first hour of bombardment. "Admiral Clark sends his compliments," her communications officer reported. "The Hunt fleets have eliminated the last Zentari naval forces. We are now the only human ships in Zentari space." Mary nodded and continued to watch the planet die below her. Somewhere in the ruins of those crystalline cities, alien children were crying for parents who would never come home. She thought about Jenny Miller, the 7-year-old girl whose final transmission had helped break humanity's spirit. This was for Jenny, and all the other human children who had died screaming. Engineer Daniel White worked at a secure facility on Pluto, designing weapons that could destroy entire star systems. His current project was called the Extinction Protocol, a series of devices that used controlled quantum collapse to destabilize stellar cores. The theory was simple. Every star existed in a delicate balance between gravitational collapse and nuclear fusion. If that balance could be disrupted at the quantum level, the star would either explode in a supernova or collapse into a black hole. Either result would eliminate everything in the system. "Test number 47, Daniel spoke into his recorder. "Scale model stellar core, hydrogen-helium composition typical of G-type stars. Initiating quantum destabilization sequence." The miniature star in his laboratory began to fluctuate as the quantum field generators disrupted its internal structure. Within seconds, the carefully controlled fusion reaction became chaotic, and the stellar model collapsed into a tiny point of infinite density. "Success," Daniel reported. "Artificial black hole formation confirmed. Estimated deployment time for full-scale version, 6 weeks." He looked at the plans for the completed weapon system. Each Extinction Protocol device could eliminate an entire solar system, turning planets and space stations into exotic matter falling into an artificial black hole. 17 Zentari colony systems had been marked for deployment. The galaxy would remember what happened to species that tried to exterminate humanity. "Colonel, Rachel Stone commanded the Psychological Warfare Division, broadcasting messages to the few surviving Zentari forces. Her job was to break their will to resist by showing them exactly what humans were capable of when pushed beyond mercy. Attention Zentari survivors. She transmitted on all known alien frequencies. This is Colonel Stone of the Terran Defense Force. You are watching the live feed from your homeworld. The transmission showed orbital views of Zentari Prime as it continued to burn under human bombardment. The beautiful crystalline cities were now craters filled with radioactive glass. The death toll had reached over 1 billion alien civilians. Your leaders chose to exterminate human colonies, Rachel continued. They killed our children and destroyed our homes. Now you will learn what it means to face humanity's wrath. She switched to recordings of other Zentari worlds under attack. Planets cracking apart under quantum bombardment. Space stations being consumed by artificial black holes. Entire solar systems vanishing into cosmic darkness. Surrender is not an option, she concluded. Your species chose genocide. We are simply returning the favor. The transmissions were broadcast continuously throughout known space, ensuring that other alien civilizations would understand the consequences of threatening humanity. Several species sent diplomatic messages expressing their commitment to peaceful relations with human space. Agent Tom Harper led the deep cover operations that hunted down individual Zentari survivors who had fled to other star systems. His team specialized in tracking aliens who tried to blend in with refugee populations or hide among non-aligned species. The current target was a Zentari engineer named Zax 471, who had escaped the destruction of a research station and was now hiding on the neutral world of Kepler 438b. The planet was home to several different alien species, making it easy for Zentari refugees to disappear among the general population. Tom did not care about diplomatic protocols or neutral territory. He had orders to eliminate every Zentari in the galaxy, and he intended to follow those orders completely. Target confirmed, his partner Agent Lisa Bell reported through their encrypted communication link. Zentari subject located in the merchant quarter, operating under the alias of a vegan trader. Tom checked his weapons and equipment. The sonic disruptor would kill the alien quickly and quietly. The quantum eraser would eliminate all evidence of Zentari presence on the planet. Within an hour, it would be as if the target had never existed. Move in, he ordered. The hunt was almost over. Intelligence reports suggested fewer than 1,000 Zentari remained alive in the entire galaxy. Most were scattered individuals hiding among other species, no longer capable of organized resistance. But Tom and his teams would find them all eventually. The human memory was long, and the human capacity for revenge was unlimited. Dr. Karen Lewis worked in the research facility on Proxima Centauri, where the last known Zentari prisoner was being held for study. The creature had been captured 3 months earlier during a raid on a hidden alien base, and Karen had been tasked with learning everything possible about Centauri biology before it died. The alien was strapped to an examination table, its crystalline body showing signs of deterioration from prolonged captivity. Karen had already learned how to disrupt their neural networks, how to cause maximum pain without immediate death, and how to keep them conscious during various forms of biological experimentation. Subject remains responsive to external stimuli, she reported. Neural pathways continue to function despite significant structural damage. Estimated survival time, 48 hours. She looked at the data she had collected over months of research. Every detail of Zentari physiology, every weakness in their biology, every method of causing pain and death had been carefully documented. The information would be stored in human archives as a warning to future generations. Never again would humanity be caught unprepared by alien aggression. Final experiment. Karen said into her recorder. Testing the effects of sustained sonic bombardment on crystalline structure degradation. The Zentari prisoner tried to speak, producing the musical tones that served as their language. Karen had learned enough of their communication methods to understand what it was saying. It was begging for death. She activated the sonic generators and watched the alien's body begin to crack and crumble. The creature's neural patterns showed extreme pain and terror, but she continued the experiment until its life signs finally ceased. The last Zentari research subject was dead. Soon, the last Zentari in the galaxy would follow it into extinction. President Kate Sullivan stood before the assembled leaders of humanity and prepared to address the species that had transformed from peaceful explorers into the galaxy's most efficient killers. The war was entering its final phase, with fewer than 100 confirmed Zentari survivors remaining. Citizens of the Terran Federation, she began. 3 years ago, the Zentari hegemony attempted to exterminate. 5 years after New Dallas burned, Dr. Karen Lewis stood in her laboratory on Proxima Centauri and recorded the death of the last known Zentari in the galaxy. The creature had survived in her research facility for 8 months, providing valuable data about alien biology and pain tolerance. Now it lay motionless on the examination table, its crystalline body finally succumbing to the effects of prolonged experimentation. Final log entry, Project Extinction. Karen spoke into her recorder. Subject Zentari Prime 001 expired at 14:32 Standard Time. Cause of death: complete neural network collapse following sustained sonic bombardment. This concludes our research into Zentari biology and marks the confirmed elimination of the last member of their species. She looked at the broken remains of what had once been a living, thinking being. The Zentari had possessed art, music, literature, and philosophy. They had built cities that gleamed like jewels and explored the stars with the same curiosity that drove humanity. All of that was gone now, wiped from the galaxy by human determination and human rage. Karen felt no regret. She thought of Jenny Miller, the 7-year-old girl whose final transmission had helped break humanity's restraint. She thought of the 20 million humans who had died in the initial Zentari attack. The aliens had chosen genocide, and humanity had simply been more efficient at it. Ambassador George Phillips represented the new humanity at the Galactic Council, where representatives from dozens of alien species gathered to discuss trade, diplomacy, and mutual cooperation. The great chamber that had once echoed with debates about peaceful coexistence now fell silent whenever the human delegation entered. The Terran Federation wishes to address recent concerns about our military actions, George said, standing at the podium that overlooked the assembled alien diplomats. Some species have expressed worry about humanity's response to Zentari aggression. He looked out at faces that showed fear, disgust, and barely concealed horror. The Keth delegation had moved their seats as far from the human section as possible. The Vrax traders refused to make eye contact. Even the ancient elders of the core worlds seemed uncomfortable in human presence. Let me be clear, George continued. Humanity did not choose this path. The Zentari forced us to become what we are. Now, they attacked our colonies without warning, murdered our civilians without mercy, and attempted to eliminate our entire species from the galaxy. He activated a holographic display showing the final statistics from the war. Zentari military casualties: 847,000 confirmed kills. Zentari civilian casualties: 12.7 billion dead across 17 worlds. Total Zentari survivors: 0. We defended ourselves, George said simply. And we succeeded? The chamber remained silent. No species dared to criticize humanity's methods. Not when human fleets patrolled the space lanes and human weapons could destroy entire star systems. The galaxy had learned that peaceful, diplomatic humanity was gone forever. General Sandra Mitchell commanded the occupation forces in former Zentari Space, now designated as the Human Expansion Zone, where crystalline cities had once reached toward alien suns. Human settlements were growing like aggressive weeds. The transformation was complete and irreversible. Status report, she requested from her headquarters on the former Zentari Prime. All major systems secure, her aide Colonel Nancy Foster reported. Construction crews have finished converting the remaining Zentari infrastructure for human use. Population transfer from Earth and the colonies is proceeding ahead of schedule. Sandra looked out through the reinforced windows of her command. Center at the human city being built in the crater where the Zentari capital had stood. The new structures were functional and militaristic, designed for defense rather than beauty. Weapons platforms dotted the skyline, and patrol ships moved constantly through the atmosphere. Any signs of alien survivors in the outer systems? She asked. Negative, General. Deep space reconnaissance has found no trace of Zentari presence anywhere in the sector. Agent Harper's teams eliminated the last confirmed sighting 3 months ago. Sandra nodded with satisfaction. The human expansion zone was truly human now, cleansed of alien presence and ready for colonization. The species that had tried to eliminate humanity had been eliminated in return, their worlds claimed as spoils of war. Continue standard patrols, she ordered, and remind all units that any alien presence in human space is to be reported immediately. The galaxy had been reorganized around a single principle, avoiding humanity's wrath. The Keth pirates, once feared throughout the outer systems, now operated under strict guidelines to avoid any contact with human shipping. The Vrax Trade Consortium had established special protocols for dealing with human merchants, offering preferential rates and exclusive access to rare materials. Even the powerful elder species, who had dominated galactic politics for millennia, sent regular diplomatic gifts to Earth and carefully avoided any actions that might be interpreted as threatening. They had watched humanity transform from peaceful colonists to efficient exterminators in less than 5 years, and they had no desire to experience human military capabilities firsthand. President Kate Sullivan, now serving her 4th consecutive emergency term, addressed the human population from her office in the rebuilt capital of New Geneva. The war was over, but humanity had changed forever. Citizens of the Terran Federation, she began, today marks the 5th anniversary of the Zentari attack on our colonies. 5 years ago, they attempted to eliminate humanity from this galaxy. They failed. She paused, looking directly into the camera that would broadcast her words to every human world in known space. We have not only survived, we have thrived. Human territory now spans 47 star systems. Our population has grown to over 5 billion. Our military is the strongest force in the galaxy, and our enemies are extinct. The response from human worlds was immediate and enthusiastic. Cities celebrated with parades and public festivals. Military units fired ceremonial weapons into the air. Children who had been born after the war learned about the great victory that had secured their future. But we must never forget the price of peace, Kate continued. We must never again allow ourselves to be vulnerable to alien aggression. The galaxy has learned to fear humanity, and that fear is our greatest protection. She thought about the species humanity had become. They were no longer the peaceful explorers who had first reached the stars. They were predators now, efficient killers, who had proven their willingness to commit genocide when threatened. It was not what she had wanted for her people, but it was what the galaxy had forced them to become. Captain Jake Morrison, now an old man with gray hair and tired eyes, taught the next generation of human naval officers aboard the training vessel TCS Academy. His students were young men and women who had grown up during the war, who had learned that strength was the only currency that mattered among the stars. The Zentari made one critical mistake. He told his class as they studied tactical displays of the final battles. They assumed that humans would fight like civilized beings. They expected us to follow the rules of warfare that govern other species. He activated a holographic recording of the battle where he had first encountered Centauri forces, when the TCS Defiance had been a simple patrol cruiser and he had believed in peaceful coexistence. Civilized warfare has rules, Jake continued. No targeting of civilians, no weapons of mass destruction, no fighting to total extinction. The Centauri followed those rules in their conflicts with other species. The recording showed New Dallas burning, human colonies destroyed, children crying for help that would never come. Humans do not follow those rules when our children are threatened, he said quietly. We become something else entirely. We become monsters, and we are very good at it. His students watched the historical footage with fascination rather than horror. To them, the complete extermination of the Centauri was simply a fact of history, a lesson in the importance of human strength and alien weakness. Your job as naval officers is to ensure that no other species makes the same mistake the Centauri did, Jake concluded. You will patrol human space, protect human interests, and demonstrate human power to anyone who might consider threatening us. Lieutenant Amy Davis, one of his brightest students, raised her hand. Sir, what if another species tries to negotiate with us instead of fighting? Jake smiled, but it was the cold smile of a predator rather than the warm expression of a teacher. Then we negotiate from a position of strength. We let them know what happened to the last species that threatened humanity. We make sure they understand that human children are protected by human wrath. The lesson continued, but Jake's mind wandered to memories of the war. He thought about Admiral Hayes, who had died fighting impossible odds. He thought about the colonists who had chosen to detonate nuclear weapons rather than submit to alien rule. He thought about Jenny Miller, whose final transmission had helped transform humanity from victims into executioners. The galaxy was safer now, at least for humans. Other species had learned to fear the peaceful-looking apes from Earth, understanding that beneath their diplomatic smiles lay the capacity for unlimited violence. Trade flowed freely through human space. Human colonies grew and prospered. Human children played in safety under skies patrolled by the most powerful military force. The galaxy, HFY